8. We turned a corner, then sped down a side hallway. At the next intersection I spied another iron ladder, and Charney scurried up to head level before I reached it. We climbed in silence, passing 2 more levels before it ended halfway up a wall. A glance over my shoulder caused a quick shock of apprehension to ripple through my neck and shoulders. Dude, each level is cleaner than the last. Charney stared up the hallway.
You're telling me? Get a load of those.
Twin statues stood on either side of grand doors polished to a high sheen. One depicted a woman wrapped in linen and twisted to one side as she stared down at her raised heel. The other posture was equally unrealistic and portrayed a half-man with a thick lower body leading to powerful haunches which ended in hooves. Both carved from blue stone, they reflected focused rays of light filtering down through holes in the ceiling. I turned, but the hallway came to an abrupt halt behind us with no side passages. A wide bookcase packed with leather-bound tomes covered the bulkhead from floor to ceiling. Why would a ladder from a jail lead to all this? Charney pointed to the dead end.
More importantly, what's over there?
Huh? I focused on the wall of books, scanning the edges as I drew closer. Light framed them, blinked, then faded. Blinked, then faded. Your Discover Hidden Doors skill has reached rank 14. There's a door there.
How do you...
I waved him forward. All I know is I'm not waltzing through the other doors and into goddess knows what. Charney has learned the Discover Hidden Doors skill. Charney's Discover Hidden Doors skill is rank 1.
Wow, neat trick.
He nudged my hip with one elbow.
Hanging out with you won't be boring.
If the past is any indicator, you'll get more than you bargained for.
Are you threatening me?
He smirked. We reached the bookcase, then ran our fingers along the outer edges in search of hinges or a release mechanism. When that proved fruitless, I suggested yanking a few books out, then sliding them back into place. After all, I lived in a game. He handled the low shelves while I went to work top down. I'd reached the 3rd shelf when a loud slam echoed up the hallway from behind. I sighed, then rolled my eyes. Great. We turned to spy 2 women dressed in ornate white cloth, not unlike the statue of the goddess next to them. Their faces went slack. Then they turned and sped back to the doors. They banged them.
Let us in! Open the door! Intruders!
Guess the doors are too heavy for them to pull open alone. I locked eyes with my partner in crime. Pull books faster. Don't bother putting them back. I said a little prayer to the AI that we wouldn't spring a trap. A thunk behind us signaled the opening of the doors.
Halt! In the king's name, I order you to halt.
I wheeled, drew my bow, then yanked an arrow free. A bare-chested soldier with 2 of those red stripes tattooed on the front of his shoulder charged toward us with a small axe raised in one hand and a wooden buckler the other. Pull books.
I hadn't planned on stopping, dude.
I raised my bow with an arrow's fletching pinched between 2 fingers and a thumb, so I stared down the shaft. I didn't charge the first arrow, but it whistled off the bowstring nonetheless. By the time it lodged in his buckler, I'd drawn another. He barreled toward me in long strides.
Faster, Charney,
the goblin cursed.
You seem to forget I have a strong sense of self-preservation. If I could go any faster, you can bet your ass I would.
Good to know, because this is about to turn into a... The warrior closed the last few feet in lunging steps, but when he drew back his axe, telegraphing his attack, I dipped, crossed my body with the bow in both hands, then struck his weapon-wielding wrist. As he tumbled into me with one arm raised, I dropped a hand, then punched him in the gut before twisting to the side and pinning his arm against the wall. Our noses huffed air inches apart. His buckler slammed into my shoulder, threatening my grip on the bow, so I raised one foot without looking down, then stomped on his boot with all the force I could muster. To my attacker's credit, he didn't even yelp when I crushed his toes, but the axe slipped from his grasp and tumbled to the floor.
Hey, stop in the name of the...
A second voice resonated from the other side of the hallway. Yeah, I get it. I growled and ground my teeth as my arms trembled with exertion. In the name of the king. I threw all my weight against my attacker, but he gave just enough to use my momentum against me as he ducked low, sending my forehead into the wall. His shoulders slammed into my waist, then raised me off the floor as he drove me across the narrow hallway. A huff ended in a wheeze as the wind left my lungs when my back slammed into the wall. My bow rattled to the floor, landing next to his axe. Footsteps thundered as more guards bounded toward us. Books tumbled to the floor. Then, a muffled thump came from the wall behind the bookcase.
Got it, boss.
Locked in a struggle with the barbarian bastard, I couldn't have cared less. Soon a second wave would be on us, and this whole escape would be over. If I didn't find a way to break the stalemate, our gooses were good and flambéed. Then the fighter tried to free the elbow I gripped so he could slam me with the buckler froze, and I sensed the tension slithering out of his arms. He gasped, then crumpled against me. I twisted, then shoved him into the inbound attacker. When his comrade caught him, I spied the axe lodged into his spine. Charney has killed a level 22 warrior. You earn 2,176 XP. Bones squeaked when I pried the weapon free with a grunt, but I didn't stick around to use it, opting instead to slip through the crevice, then slam the bookcase closed behind us. We stood with our backs pressed to the other side as the soldier pounded it. I eyed my XP bar as it blinked on one end. I was so close to advancement, I couldn't see any gap between the golden bar and the end of the meter. My stamina bar blinked in warning. All that running with Destiny every morning of my life, and melee still took it out of me. Would it ever be enough? You see a lock? Lever? Anything? I asked. Charney stepped away, then scanned around the hidden door. Nothing. My body bounced as the soldier threw his weight into the bookcase. I shoved it back into place with my ass. Okay, clear out. The goblin danced backward a few steps, drew his staff from his back, and assumed a fighting stance. I waited for the next impact. After it came, I stepped back, counted 1,000, then yanked the bookcase door open. The attacker tumbled forward and I lodged the axe into the back of his neck when he passed. He tumbled to his knees, reached back for the weapon, then tumbled onto his face. Game over, fucker. You have killed a level 24 swordsman, plus 3,176 XP. I still didn't level. I cursed. Charney kicked him. Dick. We sent a shared gaze up the hallway. The two women stood with their hands covering their mouths. I retrieved my bow, then saluted them with it. Charney threw up his middle finger.
Here's a message for your stinking king.
I slammed the door, dislodged the axe, then wedged it on the side with the inner hinges. Then I turned. Nice job with the first guy. He might have saved my bacon.
Might have? No, I definitely saved your ass.
Thanks. That won't hold him for long. Let's get the hell out before they send reinforcements. Although my previous experience in Enora led me to expect a staircase leading back into the bowels of the jail, and a constant back and forth with guards flooding the place to pin us in, luck actually proved on my side. An ascending stone stairway with 15 steps led to a rounded steel door set into a wall. I turned the dogs, grabbed the handle, expecting it would be rusted shut, then yanked it open to reveal daylight. Wow, Charney, that might be the first time I ever...
Cut it with the jabber, boss. We gotta get the hell out of here.
He rushed past me, then I followed, into an alley. I formed a half smile. Now there's the Enora I know.
What are you going on about? It's an alley. You've never seen an alley before?
Tons of them. I met Giles in an alley. I beat down a northerner in an alley before turning her over to the Templars. That's my point exactly. I clapped him hard over the shoulder. Charney's knees buckled, but he righted himself, then glared up at me.
Jerk.
Sorry.
Gah.
He huffed, then hustled away. A distant roaring sound came to my ears, like waves crashing. You have completed a quest. The Great Escape. Objectives. Escape your cell. Completed. Discover a path home. Completed. Enter the city of Brusaria. Completed. Rewards. 100 gold. 5,000 XP. When I focused on my godforsaken XP bar, numbers popped up to reveal I needed another 1,739 XP to advance. I growled, but a new pain materialized and my vile thoughts faded. You are being offered a new quest. Your first conquest. Capture the Greater Brusaria Way Portal to claim it for the Fowler Foundation. Rewards. 15,000 XP. 1,000 gold. Just like the Enora of old. I'd been told about the conquest system when I spied way portals, but it hadn't offered me a quest until I finished the one I worked. I sensed design elements, but real-time design, still tailored for me, and I loved it. Soon I'd hit level 25 as a hunter. A pair of katana and level 40 as a shogun would have been nice, but at least I wasn't a total noob. Where are you going? I gave chase. which didn't take much considering the ground his stubby little legs covered. We need a plan.
As far from here as I can get. Plans are good, but if I've learned anything from years of running from humans, it's best you have a hole to crawl into before you start laying them. So, what say we find a hole and crawl into it?
Yeah, I'm good with that. Indicators flooded one side of my HUD. I ticked them off as we ran. You have discovered Brusaria, the royal seat to the Latrell monarchy. Brusaria is the largest city in Rubal, boasting all manners of trade, a bustling port, museums, and entertainment. It is referred to as the Jewel of the East by sailors everywhere, plus 4,214 XP. You have discovered Port Constance, plus 1,221 XP. Those are waves. I doubted any sailors would be wrapping their ways around the continent to reach Semontia's port on the opposite side, and even if they did, it'd take us weeks to get there. Otherwise, I'd hop on a boat and work for passage. Since that wasn't my lot in life, we ran down the alley. Charney turned left like he knew his destination. A quick check of my map revealed the city in its entirety since the information transferred from the map room below, but we were still getting Discovery XP. Very cool. It was impossible not to notice the grand scale of Brusaria. Charney read my mind.
Wow, this place is huge.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Probert Mulk has died.
I cursed. Charney assigned the murderers a vile title. They were turning my blacksmith's screws. Somebody was going to pay for that. We jogged another block until the sounds of chatter came on the air. He ground to a halt.
Hear that?
I nodded. People.
Lots of them. So, you ready to blend in?
I looked him up and down. I don't think my blending in will be the problem.
What?
He set his hands on his narrow hips.
You don't think a city this size is going to have other races?
Why do I feel like I don't know your whole story? Charney rolled his eyes.
Can anyone really know someone else's story? What's the plan?
I shrugged. No clue. I don't know anything about this place.
Great. And you're our leader. To think I longed to enter combat at your side someday.
You just killed somebody at my side 3 minutes ago.
Yeah, and it was fucking great. So let's figure this out.
He crossed his arms over his chest, bunching his robe. His feet shuffled into a new stance. He sighed.
Okay, what's your first concern?
My first concern?
Are you going to be an echo all day, or can you gather your thoughts? We can't just flap our arms and fly home, so what's priority one?
I recalled the message of a moment ago. I'd like to save Mulk from more pain, but since that's not an option, I guess we need to find a place to lie low.
Right. You got coin?
I checked my inventory. Not much. I left it at the Foundation for Pulo to use, but the escape quest just rewarded me a little chunk.
I received some as well. So we're not rich or anything, but maybe it'll get us a room somewhere.
Good idea. I could bind there in case anything happens. I don't want to end up back at the cell. Charney shook his head.
Won't your current binding return you to the Foundation if you die? Isn't that desirable?
At the risk of being annoying, I'll answer your question with a question, twisted up.
Go ahead.
What if one of us falls and the other is left here? He furrowed his eyebrows, uncrossed his arms, then dropped them to his sides. What? I asked, confused.
Huh? Oh, it's nothing.
No, really. What is it? Charney paused, and although his expression was too slack to get an accurate read, I had the sense he was rolling something around in his mind. I adopted a gentler tone. Charney, what is it?
It's stupid, I know. But I don't think anyone besides my sister had ever thought of me like you just did.
What do you mean?
That you wouldn't just return to your bind point because I was here too. Man, I might have had you all wrong.
Oh, I smiled, then stifled it. Wait, what do you mean you had me all wrong? How did you think I'd behave? He waved one hand.
There's no complimenting some people.
I found a crate in the corner of the alley and tested it with my weight. Then I sat. We could suicide and return to the Foundation. Charney scratched one temple.
I don't know, man. I'm not one for self-inflicted pain. Could you make it quick for me?
No. I couldn't be the one who killed you. Someone else would have to do it, or you'd have to drink poison. I recalled how Roshan escaped her captivity in Trowsby. Or jump from somewhere up high.
Oh, right. If you kill me, I actually die. I forget that.
Well, then maybe I've made you a little too comfortable. Charney leaned against the wall, then looked skyward.
It's funny, right? Always with the jokes. Seriously, boss, we don't even know where we were actually imprisoned. Nothing about this place. Soldiers could come flooding out from anywhere. We need a plan.
As if Solara not only existed, but shone a light down from the cloudless sky above. A thought tore through my mind. Man, you're going to think I'm crazy.
Too late, but tell me anyway.
I chuckled. We've been goading this king into war ever since I left the Dark Wood. At first we didn't even know it, but eventually we went against his every edict. We executed his governor. We took out the Warsager who did his will by scrying magic users and sending them for repatriation, then eventually came to feed his dark essence.
Yeah? I have no idea where you're going with this.
Then why not let me finish? He waved a conciliatory hand. If you think about it, we got a free trip all the way across the continent. While there might only be 2 of us, we're here. The king is here. There might be ways we could, I don't know, prepare the ground for what's to come.
You're saying we could, what? Throw arc spanners into the king's operation?
Something like that. At the very least, get the lay of the land. While we could share our maps with the team, knowing the area, or a good path through it, will serve us better. But if we could do a little damage in the process, all the better. Recognition dawned on his features. His eyes went wide in epiphany.
Oh my goodness, boss. You're right.
He snapped his fingers. Taken aback by his vehement agreement, I cocked my head to one side. Then he continued his thought.
You are crazy. We can't fight a war by ourselves. You don't even have your swords. I'm level 19. What am I gonna do, smite someone to death? We can't take on the whole city. You're out of your gem-picking mind.
I don't plan to do it alone. You followed me through all those portals, sucked down numerous invisibility potions, no doubt.
Only 2, actually. The big one's last. Tasted like a Swice's ass, though.
I'm not going to ask how you know what that tastes like. Anyway, I marked those portal locations on my map. If we can find a way back to the Foundation, then I can bind to one of those garrisons, and Liatra can use my new bind point to bring an army through. We could bum rush the city.
You're a brave bastard, I'll give you that. But the line between brave and stupid.
I relaxed and let my back press into the cold wall behind the crate. Hands in my lap, I closed my eyes and pushed every bit of tension out of my shoulders, followed by my chest and arms, then my lower body like I did every morning during meditation. But Charney didn't take to the silence for long.
Oh, now I've pissed you off with logic, right? The goblin has overstepped. Again. Do you want to cut out my tongue like when I cursed at Rashan?
I shook my head but kept my eyes closed. Nope.
Then what is it?
I allowed one eye to pop open. I'm just waiting for you to come up with a better use of our time. Go ahead. I'll wait.
You're infuriating, Fowler.
I shrugged. I breathed. Sure, the King's Guard might flood out of wherever they'd be coming from at any moment, but the goblin was right. We needed a plan. It was unlikely they'd kill me and send me back anyway. They'd be ordered to keep me alive, which I couldn't guarantee for Charney. So, I waited.
Okay, then.
The confident delivery of his words caused both my eyelids to flutter open.
What if I knew a way to help Mulk and find a place to lay low? You know, while you come up with your master plan about how to take the king's city from him.
Oh, I'm all ears.
Fine. I'll tell you, but you're probably going to end up paying for 2 inn rooms.
9. 1 day later. Priya. Only minutes after the door was slammed shut and the bare-chested brutes went on their brooding ways, an azure glow appeared on the other side of the bars. Semi-transparent, Giles looked up and down the tunnel in both directions, transformed to solid, then vanished in a cloud of purple smoke. He reappeared beside me. Jaren's head came around in a wide-mouthed wonderment, but when he locked eyes with Giles, a toothless smile creased his chubby cheeks. He threw his little arms out, then Giles snatched him up.
Lady Priya.
Giles, how did they find you? With Jaren latched onto my boob. Although I'd intended to feed my boy from my breast to ensure he slumbered before I settled for a nap in the dark wedge left by our miners,
It hadn't been him who called their attention. It seemed Gemini's excitations about my snores echoing up and down the cave's passages had been true after all. How kind that the rest of the Foundation's occupants hadn't derided me for them. Then again, I was the matron of this place, a title whose meaning couldn't be lost on the daughter of Jara. Although the pair who found us didn't bother with pleasantries, and certainly didn't care how rough they handled me with my babe in my arms, they knew right where to take us. So, I fumed in the same cell where we'd once imprisoned Governor Zane. Although I considered melting the pair of level 20-something fighters, combat with a child in one's arms was ill-advised. Even if I couldn't harm him, I couldn't risk one of the cretins landing an unlucky shot. My boy would be traumatized. When considering the complete lack of crime in our borough, I considered whether we should take the bars off the cell at one of our meetings, but I hadn't acted on it, and so it became my own prison. With Dicini and Machini underground, Liatra still hiding out with the laborers, and Giles sneaking around to check guard positions and feed information to his elven brethren. The cell was just as lonely, and equally cold, as the crevice in which we'd hidden. If nothing else, at least I didn't have to flinch every time I heard a guard within earshot. I dipped my chin toward Giles while Jaren squeezed one of his index fingers. "Thanks for coming." He dispensed with the pleasantries.
"I have word from the Queen. The infiltration team is ready."
"Oh, good. Are there any guards near Dicini, Machini, and Click? Could we bring them in to contribute to our liberation?"
Giles shook his head. "Gemini couldn't have been clearer on that point. Pulo doesn't come out until an invading force has been repelled in its entirety."
"I didn't ask if Pulo could fight. I asked if—"
"Forgive me, matron. I didn't realize how crabby you were."
I huffed, gathered my patience. "Fine. We'll leave them with Pulo."
"Besides, Click disappeared 20 minutes ago."
"You mean she vanished? Or did she find a hole in our defenses?"
"One moment she was in Dicini's lap, then she faded from existence and was gone."
"So Gemini summoned her. Could be a hopeful indicator." Giles nodded.
"Could also mean he found himself in combat or used the animal for a distraction while he was under duress. We might not soon know. If they took him where I think they did."
"Yes, Brusaria, the king's seat. I measured it on my map last night in our hiding hole. Almost 3,000 miles. I huffed a disgusted laugh. That I never considered the range limitations of clan invitations is a great oversight on my part. I can't help but feel responsible that he's out of touch."
"Don't blame yourself."
My head whipped around, and I snapped with impatience. "Then tell me who to blame."
"Matron Priya, you carry the air of a toothing child, if you'll forgive my saying so. But since you asked, lay the fault of ill preparation on me."
Giles leveled a rare, stern gaze.
"I'm his mentor, his combat trainer, an advisor. While the Queen frowns on allowing outsiders into our clan chats, Gemini most certainly would have been an exception to the rule."
He shook his head, then folded his arms across his chest as he slouched on the bench.
"A reminder I received from my beloved mother the moment she got word the Chenois was off premises."
Well, it's not like she thought of it either.
"A debate I chose to sidestep for obvious reasons."
I chuckled. I'm sure chastising a 2,000-year-old queen who lived through the annihilation of Nin wouldn't play well.
"To say the least. Of course, she probably did think of it. She might have thought it somehow uncouth to invite him, lest she imply he wasn't a real leader of his own people."
Strange as it sounds, there's certainly logic to it. Gemini is new to this world. He's worked hard to build what we have here, to forge alliances. The invitation might have been misconstrued. He might have thought the Queen doesn't think he can do it for himself. I raised my shoulder in a half shrug. At least we haven't seen alerts about Gemini having fallen. Best I know, there's no range limit on those, so we can take some measure of comfort in that. And if Click is with him...
Don't forget Johnny.
The little mystery plagued our minds until we perused our combat logs and found the ugly little goblin used a high-powered invisibility potion prior to Gemini stepping through the portal. An uncharacteristic show of bravery if the goblin followed my man. And although I initially expected Giles might have rooted him out snoozing in a hole in his new chapel, I had to acknowledge he'd stepped up when the rest of us had failed. A check of the Foundation map assuaged us of any doubts. Giles jumped to his feet.
The 2nd Assassin's Brigade is inbound. I'll send a private chat to Liatra and have her meet us in the Great Room. I'll acquire a key to free you.
Is the way through the mine from the pools clear for her to make it to the Great Room?
Yes, I cleared the way after I received your message. No doubt they're scrambling around outside in pursuit of me. Did you miss the alert from your combat log?
I turned it off when I napped. Damn thing pops up and annoys me to no end.
I see. Well, we'd best get on with it before they gain their wits.
What about Jarin?
I'll have Liatra bring Validus with her.
What if they encounter guards?
They mill about the exterior. I haven't heard any enter yet, and I assume they're assembling before hunting me where their comrades fell. Also, I overheard one of them pontificating over the small population. They have no idea there are 50 people in hiding. Idiots. Either way, I'll be waiting in the Great Room to ensure our allies pass into this hall unscathed. Then I'll go about my business while they come to wait outside the cell. Best we group up.
Agreed. I tapped Jarin's nose. Right, big boy? He pulled my finger into his mouth and sucked on it, then dropped it with a disgusted twisting of his features. I eyed the digit and found coal dust. When I looked up, Giles stood on the opposite side of the bars in his ghostly blue form, wielding 2 long daggers Probert Mulk constructed for him. I thought to ask Giles where Probert was, but we had business, and the sooner we got on with it, the sooner we'd free him of his torment. For my lack of patience, an hour might have passed by the time Validus and Liatra appeared outside my cell. Liatra wore a fine silken lilac robe I hadn't seen before. I winked my eyes in succession. Robes of grand intellect, soul-bound, level 40, type armor, slot, body, quality, very rare, durability, 100 of 100, plus 27 intelligence, plus 15 constitution. Crafted by Samancia Renard. I gasped. The Elven Queen made robes for you? Liatra smiled. Not especially for me. She gifted them to me right after we returned from our adventure against Underlord Kame. Seems the Queen has hobbies. She raised her hands next to her shoulders so her palms faced the rocky ceiling of the tunnel. Who knew? I suppose I'd be more surprised if she didn't boast myriad skills after a life so long. I lowered my tone, as if to tell a secret. It also wouldn't surprise me if she custom-weaved them for the healer who kept alive the Shenhua to whom she'd bound herself. You think she made them for me, then? I nodded. The level says a lot. You're level 40. The robes are level 40. The durability is perfect and they're untattered. Yes, I'm almost certain she made them for you. Did you soul-bind them with a scroll? No, they bound when I adorned them. Ah, that solves it. Her skill must be maxed. No one else could have worn them before you unless they fell in battle and the soul binding was revoked by the— I bit back the word, then let it slither through my teeth. Goddess. Liatra twisted her fingers together, looked down at the floor, then cleared her throat. Might I ask a question, matron? Of course. Where did you learn so much about crafting? My mood soured in an instant. If I wanted to be truthful, I could tell her how the memories flooding my mind when both sleeping and wakeful reminded me of so much I'd learned under the tutelage of my mother in the dark wood, then at the academy in Warrington prior to my lavation. But the contrasting personalities of the 2 women I'd become left me impatient. The constant war between the simple woman of the woods and the refined, well-trained former magister and shadow magician left me unruly, so I gathered my scruples and kept it simple. I'm over 100 years old. One picks things up as she goes. Very impressive. She tucked her chin to her chest. How fortunate are we to have one of such experience to lead us? Her eyes darted to Jarin. And privileged to ensure the light continues on in this world. My heart skipped a beat. I returned her bow. Thank you for saying so, Liatra. How lucky are we to have a faithful healer so well versed in— The glowing apparition that was Prince Giles Renard zipped into view. A bloody dagger hung on one hip. He produced an iron key, slotted it, then unlocked the door with a resounding clank. Whipping it open, he gestured for Validus to enter. The Michonne grinned widely when she set her eyes on Jarin. Then she stopped short and threw her hands out to await the child's approval. My son was persnickety about making his own choices. Strange for such a young child. But he threw his arms out and formed flexing claws. so I handed him over. Validas kissed his forehead, whipped him around so he could face outward, then bounced him. Aside from Dicini, Validas was the boy's favorite non-familial playmate. Giles waved his hand with purpose.
Come, matron. The portal just opened in the great room. Time to send a message to the king.
Oh, people are about to be set alight. Liatra grinned. Or as Master Gemini would say, time for some payback, bitches. Payback indeed. My abbreviated part in the encounter passed in what I'd later see as a near blink of the proverbial eye. The Queen's Brigade passed through the portal and into our great room with weapons drawn, all adorned in the same black leather attire. Long strands of white elven hair were tucked into woven caps that folded back to form rings across their foreheads. When they'd morphed from rows into a circle and turned their attentions to their recently returned prince, he gave a single, curt nod. Each elf withdrew a vial, sucked down the contents, then filed down the tunnel toward the cave exit. Giles Renard has invited you to a party. Do you wish to accept this invitation? I nodded. Giles, private.
Might as well earn some XP while we're at it, yes?
Priya, private. Indeed. Lead the way. We followed the line of trained killers until we reached the curve in the cave leading to daylight. There they aligned in ranks of 2, faded into stealth mode, then crept into the daylight in pairs, with each pairing splitting in different directions along the rocky faces framing the cave mouth. The chatter of the invaders brought my hackles up, and my heart thumped a quickened tempo as the desire to burn them to ashes welled inside my very being. But the levels and spells had come sporadically since I started to recall my past, so I performed a quick check to refresh myself via an abbreviated list. Spells: Air Bomb, Blizzard 3, Channel Lava, Choke 2, Concussive Blast, Fire Flash 2, Flame Torrent, Ice Shield, Levitate, Lightning Pulse 2, Mystic Sight, Shadow Void, Sleep 2, Stone Fury, Thunder 3, Weave Magic. Stone Fury. That was new. I didn't know when I'd recovered that one, but as often as I swept notifications away with impatience, I shouldn't have been surprised. The spell's appearance stood as a firm reminder to pay attention. Although the levels stopped returning weeks before, the stakes in Rubal had changed, with Trowsby firing the first shot at the Academy on behalf of the Latrell line, and with the King's own troops raiding the Foundation to take Gemini and keep us captive while they did their will in Warrington. Only one conclusion made sense. The Civil War had begun. Our revolution was underway. I drilled down onto the new spell. Stone Fury. Draw on the power of nature magic to raise stony shards from the ground below and impale your enemies. This is an area of effect, AoE, spell. Required affinity, elemental magic. 87 to 94 nature damage. Cast time, 3 seconds. Mana cost, 150 mana. Cooldown, 7 seconds. Ooh, that was pretty. The last pairing of elves zipped into the daylight. Then Giles, Liatra, and I scurried up to watch and wait. Giles leaned toward us.
Liatra, try to stay in the shadows as you heal.
The healer waved her arms, and a light show of purple, orange, and red surrounded them. A tiny portal materialized, then her angelic pet zipped into the daylight. That should help my reach. Giles nodded his approval.
Very good.
He slipped into stealth, then sped away without further words. Liatra turned. You ready for this? My features twisted up in hunger. I longed to send these bastards into the pits of Holcrum's underworld where they belong. Stand back and watch the show, love. I sped into the daylight. Screams filled the air as elves erupted from the ether, then planted swords, daggers, and arrows into our enemies. I spied a group of 3 fleeing their attackers, coming in our direction, undoubtedly targeting Liatra. I would have. Well, that won't do. Can't have our healer falling now, can we? I raised my arms over my head while focusing on the name of the newly discovered ability on my spell tab the way I always did when learning new motions. Orange light painted the ground atop the plateau just a few steps in front of the inbound threats, right where I targeted. When the first foot fell onto the area, I completed my cast. The ground belched clumps to form little holes across the circle, then shards of sharp stone whipped skyward, tearing through the leader's legs and feet. One caught him on the chin as he advanced. He tumbled face first into the grass, but his death only fed my desire for murder more. I'd been too long without blood. My inner voice, the one with the nasally, high-pitched tone I'd carried up until recently, complained. "Desire for murder? What is happening to you?" The second and third attackers proved uninhibited by the shards devastating their comrade, maybe because they'd face us or the battalion of elves chasing them down. They'd chosen us. I raised my hands again, swept them overhead in circular motions to build up momentum. Then a white wisp of moisture spread into a cloud over their heads and spat down shards of sleet. Their paces slowed as their ankles were wrapped in ice and pellets froze to their exposed skin. 2 pursuing elves closed the last of the gap. One shoved a sword into an attacker's back, ending him with a critical hit and mortal wound. The other produced a dagger and slammed it into the back of the remaining attacker's head with the same result. I grinned with satisfaction. But while I stood distracted, a shirtless giant rushed into view from one side of the cave's mouth, drew back his 2-handed axe, then readied it for a violent swing. I threw out one arm, preparing to cast Ice Shield to mitigate the damage, but the world tilted to one side when a ghostly recollection spilled into my consciousness. Pronto as a young man, although the subtle smile only touched the curve of his lips, I didn't need to see teeth to know the way his eyes softened was a sign of satisfaction, as he leaned over my shoulder to point at a word in thick script atop a scroll. Meteor. An eruption of pain zipped up my spine as my focus returned to the present. The memory couldn't have lasted more than a second, but the damage was done. The barbaric bastard leaned in close then showed a vicious grin. When I reached for my torso, where the weapon sliced deep, my hands came away drenched in blood. Liatra fled the cave, her wrists twisting in tight little motions as her pet appeared in the distance. But it was too late. It was all too late. The elven pair raised their weapons to strike down on my attacker as the pain turned to a tingling numbness. Prantu's face flashed in my mind once more. Then there was darkness.